Welcome to the next tutorial, which is Introduction to Python classes. So, as backend developer, you're going to be working with classes a lot. And what that implies is that you're going to be dealing with a lot of objects. So, let's quickly dive into Python classes. What does it mean and how we can use it? So, this particular session is to give you a theoretical background as to what Python classes simply mean. So, Python classes provide a way to create custom data types and encapsulate related data and functionality. They serve as the building blocks for oriented programming, allowing developers like you to be able to create and work with objects that have their own attributes and method. So we are going to be looking at what are attribute and also what are method during the course of this lecture. All right, so let's move to the next. So the next is defining a class. So what is a class? A class is defined using the class keyword followed by the name of the class and a colon. So just as we've seen in functions, so it's typically the same thing, just that it is instead of function, it will now be for class. And then what are attributes? So attributes are variables that store data associated with a class. They are defined within the class body. Okay. So then the next thing is method. So method are functions defined within the class that perform actions or operations on the class data. So you already know what a data simply means. Okay, so and then you know like um the different kinds of data type which we have. Okay, so next thing we are going to look at is attribute and method. So assessing attribute. So attribute can be assessed and modified using the dot notation. So object dot attribute while calling method. So methods are called using the dot notation. So basically there is a high interrelationship between functions and class. So once you're able to understand functions, class will not be so difficult as it is um, very closely related. Next thing we're going to look at is self parameter. So we are going to, you'll be seeing what self is and how we can actually apply self parameter. So self parameter is used to refer to the current instance of the class within its method. Then mutator and accessor method. So methods can be used to modify mutator or retrieve accessor. So the class attribute. Then the next thing we'll look at is array. We are looking at constructors and initialization. So you need to take note of all of these words that I am using here as is imperative for the understanding of what classes is. So you're going to be seeing something like init. So what that simply means is initialize. So it's a process of initializing your method. So the initialization method is special method that is automatically called when an object is created. So it's used to initialize the object attribute. Okay. Then next thing we will look at is argument, passing argument. So you'll be like, what is passing argument? I already discussed about parsing an argument in functions. So you already have your argument. So arguments are like um like the variable you assign to the function, but this time, oh, sorry, the data rather, or variable, you can see variable, but it is not variable in that context, but it is closer to variable. So you basically pass argument. Argument can be passed to the initialization method to set the initial values of the object's attribute. So the next thing we will look at is self parameter. So the self parameter is used within the initialization method to refer to the current instance of the class. So let's look at the next thing, which is inheritance. So like normal the when um someone dies or yeah, you'll be like let's share the inheritance. Maybe a father died and left his children. The children will be like they are fighting for the inheritance of the father and all. So inheritance is basically you being able to inherit a particular code or that has been used already in a subclass. So you as the son, you didn't do so much of the work, but because you are from that lineage or because it is your father, you have that entitlement to be able to have access to his inheritance. So the same thing is applied in inheritance in programming. So we have base class. The base class, also known as the parent or superclass. So define common attribute and method shared by related classes. Then the next thing is derived classes. So the derived class, also known as the child or subclass, inherits the attribute and method of the base class. The next thing we'll look at is code reuse. So inheritance promotes code reuse as the derived class can extend or override the base class functionality as needed. Then the Baba of the odd polymorphism. So inheritance enable polymorphism where objects of different classes can be treated as instances of common superclass. So let me quickly explain what it simply means. So code reuse. So let's say you've written a particular code, but for you to be able to like perform a particular action, you will probably need that code. So let's say um as a parent who gave birth to their children. So there is a particular place where they need to put their own signature I think to certify that they are the one that gave birth to this particular child. So the child is using his parent's signature in that particular place. So that process now you can say like code reuse or something like that. So um next thing we are going to look at is polymorphism in full context. So what is polymorphism? Polymorphism is the method, is number one, method overriding. So maybe you've created a specific method for your code, but you then eventually override it. So polymorphism now allows a derived class to override a method from the base class, providing its own implementation. Then number two, functions of polymorphism is common interface. So polymorphism will enable objects of different classes to be used interchangeably through a common interface. Then dynamic binding. So the specific implementation of method is determined at runtime based on the actual type of the object. So basically, this is an introductory part of classes. Don't worry, you will get to understand what each of those words simply means as we begin to write the code. Then next is encapsulation. So we have decapsulation and encapsulation. So what is encapsulation and its functionality? So it enables data hiding. So as a programmer, you might not want people to see like your data, so you might have to encapsulate the process to enable your data to be hidden, right? So that hackers will not be able to have access to your data. So data hiding, encapsulation allows the internal data of an object to be hidden from direct access, ensuring that data integrity by ensuring data integrity. Then number two is access modifier. So Python uses naming conventions to indicate access level, whether it is public, protected, and private. So when it is public means that everybody can be able to have access to it, and it is general open for everybody. Then at the protected level, it means that it is limited to the public access, but it's not completely private. Then private means that no any other person has access to it. Then getter and setter methods. So accessor is like the getter and mutator is the setter method, which provide control access to an object's internal data. So as a back-end developer, you'll be doing a lot of encapsulations as it requires to ensure that the backend, the data of the company which you are going to be working for, it's not compromised, and to ensure that you are giving your best. So information hiding, encapsulation promotes information hiding, allowing the implementation details of a class to be changed without affecting its users. Okay, so class and instance variable. So class variable are shared among all instances of a class and are defined at the class level, right? Then instance variable are specific to each instance of a class and are defined with the class method. So if I were you and you did not understand, you can always check back the references to ensure that you are following, right? So access and modification. Class variable can be accessed and modified using the class name, while instant variable use the self parameter. So with the whole of this knowledge, I want to believe that you are now grounded for the practical part of the class and objects. So the next thing we'll look at is special methods. So we have add, lend. So add allows the operator to be used with objects, the plus operator to be used with object, then lend defines the behavior of the lend function when used with an object. So already I had told you before the function of lend is to tell you like the total number of character, while str is string, which specify the representation of an object printer. Then get item enables you to be able to access like a sequence using indexing. So I the next thing is let's look at the practical applications of classes. So where can I use classes? All the grammar I've been saying, where what is not even the function of the classes. So you can actually use it in data modeling. So classes can be used to represent and encapsulate data structures such as customer accounts or inventory items. So number two, simulation and modeling. Classes can be used to model complex systems such as games, simulations, or scientific experiments, right? Then number three is GUI development. So classes are often used to create custom user interface components and manage the state of and behavior of graphical user interface. So what is graphics user interface? Like your desktop, like if you're building websites where you do drag and drop, those are all user interface, right? So classes will enable you to be able to create that in a more efficient way. So, this is the end of this particular section. If you have any question, ensure you ask in the next class as we are going to be looking at the practical aspect of this very course now. Thank you and see you in the next class.